what to take when you're going away traveling for your artist kit. I've come up with a perfect solution. I have found this pencil case. It's made by Smash, which I'll put a link to their products below. I have come up with the ultimate travel kit. How this started, I had a trip to Brisbane in Queensland, New South Wales quite recently, and I bought my whole backpack full of things I thought I might need to do sketches and do some filming and take photos as I went around and explored the city. Let's be real, I hardly used any of it. So now I'm off to the Van Gogh Alive exhibition in Sydney, and I'm not going to miss the opportunity to do lots of drawing, take lots of photos and filming. So, what to take when you're going away traveling for your artist kit. So you'd have your diary, your visual diary to play with, and you might have some paper, some watercolor paper or some other drawing paper, but this has got all your materials that you will need. So let's have a look at what I've got in here. In this side compartment here, I have my full watercolor paint tin. This is my studio tin. It's got all the colors that I know are here. It's going to be really easy for me to just be able to stop and do some paintings from there. So there's my tin. I've got an array of brushes, a couple of small sizes of brushes, and I have water brushes in here too. So these have the water already in them, and you can paint easily. And there you go. I've got 3 different sizes here, and I've got a couple of other brushes as well. I would probably pop in there some of my favorite brush, which is a Neef brush. I use this for all my artworks, and I love it. So that would go in there too. Salt. So salt you would use to put on a watercolor to make it have these really interesting effects. I have my middle compartment here. So I've got Posca pens, more pens than I would possibly need. These are great. I love these. They go over everything. It's Mitsubishi make them. They're angelic color. And I've got a few of these. A Boss glue stick to glue some things in my diary. Pencils. These are Derwent graphic pencils. These are beautiful archival pens, Yoni pen fine liners, sepia, and dark grey. So a kneadable eraser, very important. One of my favourite, these is a Signo Uniball black pen. I use this for writing in my journal, and I also can use it in my artworks. But then, over this side, okay, couple more staples here. Washi, pencil sharpener, little scissors. There's everything I need in here. And then I can actually fit all of my watercolor pencils in here as well. So if I wasn't carrying this around all day, I would be able to have all of these things, but it is a little bit heavy. This is heavy. If I was going to be leaving it in my hotel room, this is totally fine. And this is totally what I would take, along with my diary. And I would take some watercolor paper. I would have tape to tape down my paper onto board as well. But I'm going to be on my feet, and I don't want to be carrying all of that around. So what are the essential items I'm going to be having? What am I actually really going to bring and use? Well, I've been through my watercolors, my watercolor pencils, and I've done a little test sheet of all the colors that I have. There are a lot more than this, but these are the ones that I actually have. And then I'm going to do a little drawing. So this is the drawing that I'm going to show you how I've done. What I've done is used watercolor pencil on one side, watercolor paint on the other. The question here is, which side, which one is preferred? If I'm only going to take one or the other, what's going to be better in my visual diary here? So follow along. I'm going to show you how I do this, and then we can compare which side and why I feel, what are the pros and the cons of each medium to take as your essential travel kit. Here I have my Winsor & Newton sketchbook. This is actually a thicker paper than normal. Normally it's about 110 GSM. I'm using 170 GSM. So that means that this sketchbook will hold up to a bit more water than other sketchbooks would. I've started this drawing in my sketchbook using a Derwent watercolor pencil. This is an older set of pencils that I have, and sometimes the quality changes a little bit, but these are the old ones. They're quite good. I think I'm using the rose pink in the watercolor pencil. So really what I'm doing is just sketching out an outline shape, knowing that I will be able to add water and different pigments on top and be able to create more shape. But this is just a bit of a guide or an outline that I'm working with, and remembering that I'm also figuring out what pencils I'm going to bring, so I'm having a play with that. So here I have my water pen, so the water is inside the actual pen. So if you were to use, as you'll see later, if I was to use my paints, I can just dip it in. I wouldn't actually need to have water. This is really good for when you're maybe on a plane or just traveling somewhere in a car, wherever it might be, sketching outside when you can't have a vessel of water to be able to dip into. There are drawbacks of them, but for sketching on the go, they're really great. They're fine. So I started building up some colour here on the side with the pigment. I love this orangey colour. It's like a marigold pigment, but it's the middle chrome colour that they've got in their range. And for the actual pink, it's probably pink Madeleine. I don't know exactly, but this is what I'm guessing from my guide here. So I'm starting to create shape and using my water pen. And one thing that I always try and do, and I'd really recommend, is to try and follow the contour line of the shape that you are drawing or sketching. It makes a big difference in trying to create form. So say, for example, if you were trying to think of a ball, if you were trying to create an illusion of a ball by making lines that are going around the shape, following the contour of the shape, like here on this labia, you can see I'm going around. It gives a fullness and helps the mind see a round shape. If I was creating just up and down and across lines, it would look like a flat shape. It might be, it would look like a two-dimensional flat shape rather than a round shape. So I'm trying to create the form. This is the best way that I have found to do this. There are different ways. People use cross-hatching. They do all kinds of different things to create shape, but this is what I do in my style. With watercolor pencils, there's a few different ways that I found to be able to use them. I can draw straight on the paper and use it like a coloring in pencil. I can, as you can see here, I'm using the water brush to spread the pigment out to give it a real watercolor effect once that pigment is on the paper. But then I can also go in over the wet paper with the pencil and see how thick a line and dark it is right now. So it can make it kind of more of a crown. It gives it a different dimension. It's really thick and creamy. So for adding some saturation or some deeper tone, it can be really great. And then you can use your brush to spread that pigment out and lighten it up. So very much like watercolor, you can have, like watercolor paints, you can have that push and pull, um, tactile way you can play with the pigment. And I really love that. It's the way that I work. And I just enjoy it so much. And now it's time for the right side of this beautiful Yoni that I'm painting here. If you've ever asked yourself, how do I paint my Yoni in watercolor paint and with watercolor pencils, this is how you do it. I'm here to answer your question. I've taken the water brush and I'm dipping it in the paint pan. You can see that it handles a lot differently than the pencils. I was able to pick up that yellow pigment and just drop it on the paper. One thing we haven't really looked at too much so far is how the actual paper has been handling the pigment. On the left side with the watercolor pencils, it hasn't been a problem. It's been really, the paper's held up really well, and because it's a heavier weight, it's allowed that to do it. But coming in to use the water brush with the actual paint pans, it starts to bring up the paper a little bit. It's starting to move the top surface of the paper, and if you don't know how to handle it, you will put holes in your paper and damage the surface completely. There is some kind of repairable amount, which it just dries and it looks okay, but it's something to think about, especially if you were doing a really good artwork. But the benefits, I'm able to just drop in this really strong pigment. You can see here that I have just picked up this lovely purple and been able to put a whole amount, like quite a heavy amount of that pigment straight on the paper and pull it out. So it's been easier to work with and a lot quicker to work with than using the pencils. I think the pencils have taken more effort to build it up, where the paper, yeah, it's easier, but it's not handling it so well. So you can see this here over the right hand side. If you can see that there's getting a bit of a bally texture to the paper, there are some spots that are darker, and up at the top there near the hood you can see to the right that the paper has lifted a bit. That's because this paper is not meant for this amount of water that I've put on there. It's in my sketchbook, so it doesn't matter, but ultimately the paper will warp, and as I said before, it can get holes in there too. See how I've used my brush? I've gone over to the left side again to try and even out, and you see how I'm using my brush straight on the watercolor pencil to do the side of the Yoni. That's a really good tactic I was using there to be able to use it a bit more like a in more of a painting style. So I haven't really had to do much at all to the right side to create that the shape that I've put in there, but I've also had to leave it because that paper is so wet it has to dry. I'm also being really careful when I'm going back in on the left side that I'm not putting my hand on that paper at all, as that would smudge that drying pigment. So what's the verdict here? Okay, the right hand side, the watercolor, definitely I can come in with really strong pigment. That's really nice. It's a lot quicker way to work, but the paper is not made for holding up to that weight. The watercolor pencil, I can put a lot more layers on there. I don't have to wait for the paper to dry as long, and I can create a lot more shape with lines and layering up lots of different pigment on top of each other. So, drum roll, what's the verdict? Definitely, I think the watercolor pencil is the winner. of the essential item to have in my travel kit. These water brushes are great as well. I definitely will be using them. I think the versatility of the watercolor pencil will make for great sketches that I can bring back to my studio and turn into artworks. So there we go. Tell me what you prefer. Do you prefer the watercolor pencil or the watercolor paint? Let me know. Love you lots. Thank you everybody for watching, and I look forward to seeing your feedback. Find me on Instagram, have a chat to me over there, and I'll see you later. Bye!